Good evening. My name is Kelly Clark, and I would like to share with you a presentation on culturally responsive instruction and behavior support practices. So first of all, let's talk about what is culturally responsive instruction. A quote that I found says that culturally responsive pedagogy is a student-centered approach to teaching in which the student's unique cultural strengths are identified and nurtured to promote student achievement and a sense of well-being about the student's cultural place in the world. To do this, one must be able to discard pre-existing biases and do some rigorous self-appraisal. So what is rigorous self-appraisal, you might ask? Well, some ways that you can do this would be to write down reflections about family history, upbringing, intrapersonal relationship style, and how one's experience may differ from someone else of a different cultural background. Culturally responsive teaching is not about one day of celebrating a certain culture. It's about daily practices that bring students' cultures into instruction, valuing each student and what they bring, and teaching them as people first in order to maximize their potential as students. So some ways that we could go about incorporating culturally responsive instruction into our daily classroom could be to just learn about your students and tap into their culture. Ask them questions, have conversations with them, be curious about who they are. We can use resources that represent the students that we serve. We can provide opportunities for students to learn with one another. So, we can model asking questions and getting to know our students and teach our students how to do that with one another as well. We need to make for sure that we pronounce their names correctly, and maybe even learn a few words in the students' native languages. Communicate goals with students, and lowering expectations is not acceptable. And also work to grow the bilingual brain and really show the students that we want to embrace their culture and the diversity that they bring into the classroom and view it as an asset, and kind of take that mindset with the student versus trying to just make them, streamline them and incorporate them into just our English language or the culture that we know. For instructional planning to truly make a difference for all learners, educators must consider how students' differences affect learning and align pedagogies that effectively address those differences. Barriers to learning should be viewed from within the curriculum, instruction, and assessment methods rather than as deficits within the student. So again, that takes us back to that idea of being an asset mindset versus looking at their differences as being deficits. And so some ways that we can do this is have flexible instructional materials, delivery, and assessments. We can provide student choice on assignments. We can create lessons that connect the content to the students' cultural and daily lives. And we can also have instructional materials that relate to a variety of cultures. Next, we can look at some behavior support practices. So one thing that I have read a lot about is school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. And this will provide strategies that facilitate behavioral support for all students, including those with and without disabilities. So some things that like a PBIS system can do is, first of all, you are going to explicitly teach, recognize, and reward positive behavior. So we're going to try to downplay giving attention to the negative behaviors and really give a lot of attention to the positive behaviors that we would like to see in the classroom. We need to maximize the structure. We need to have perspective talking, meaning we need to teach students how to be empathetic. Kind of how can you put yourself in somebody else's shoes? Set aside your own ideas, your own opinions, your own biases, whatever that might be, and really put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And also to effectively respond to students' behaviors. And we need to understand that effectively responding doesn't always automatically mean, detention or some type of isolation, whether it be ISS or OSS or something like that, but to effectively respond to that student and what that student needs at the time. School-wide prevention and intervention model that proactively improves school behavior issues is what we are actually looking at. So we want to be proactive versus reactive. And so when we give those negative consequences and we do the isolation methods and things like that, we are being reactive. But how can we proactively go about preventing some of those behaviors to happen? One thing that I talked about was eliminating any of the zero tolerance policies. We need to enhance all staff members' cultural knowledge and self-awareness. We need to validate others' cultures instead of being colorblind versus not having everybody come into the classroom and wanting to treat everybody equally as if they all come from the same culture and that there isn't any differences. But we want to recognize those differences, respect those differences, and be able to talk about them. Also increase cultural relevance and establish cultural validity and equity. We need to understand that diversity makes life more colorful and learning more vivid. It makes a classroom climate burn with vigor and enthusiasm. I absolutely love that quote that I read because I think that is so true. We have so much that we can learn from one another and we need to really embrace that. So what I have done is I have looked at all of the ways that we are culturally responsive at Copeland Elementary and Southgrade Junior High. So one of the things that we do have is we have individualized student plans of study and we communicate goals with our students. And I think that we do a really good job of not lowering the bar, that we do keep the expectations set high for all of our students. We have also incorporated student-led parent-teacher conferences, which we try to promote the positive relationships between students, teachers, and parents. So we want to bring all three of those together, okay? Then we have staff, school board, and other organizations have representation of diversity. So one thing that I have noticed that we have done a really good job of is our school board of education represents kind of all of the diverse cultures that we have within our system. We have diversity on our site council. We have diversity on our parent-teacher organizations. And so I can see that all stakeholders are being involved. All teachers are trained in trauma-informed practices. We give the students the PASS assessment, and we also have the Character Strong curriculum, and this all leads into our SEL. So this does help build our cultural responsiveness when we're learning how to be sympathetic and empathetic and how to treat one another, and also how to take care of ourselves. And so this SEL piece is really huge when it comes to being culturally responsive. We also have newly adopted literature curriculum that represents diverse cultures. So then when we look at this, like, who is responsible for ensuring that we have this culturally responsive instruction and behavior supports put in place? So first of all, our school board is going to be responsible because they are the ones that pass the policies that are put into place. Then we have administration, who is going to be responsible because they are the ones that are key in building the culture that we have and ensuring that the policies are being followed, that students and teachers are all, a part of this culturally responsive culture that we're trying to build. And then we have teachers who give the instruction and are working directly one-on-one with the students. And that doesn't just include the classroom teachers, but also everybody that comes in contact with the students, the paras, the librarian, the ELL teacher, and other support staff that we have. So making sure that all of them are know exactly what it is that we're wanting to do, and that they're trained, and that they are helping these students and being culturally responsive. And then also the parents. We need to include the parents in our culture and bring them in, because they also have a wealth of knowledge that will help us help the students. So when I look at the impact, the faculty members that we have that are directly involved would be our counselor and our testing coordinator. We have our reading interventionist who are involved, because our reading interventionist works with our students who, obviously are struggling in reading, or dyslexic students and things like that. But she has also taken on the role of really helping with the PASS assessment and the SEL part of things. Our special education teacher is involved, our ESL teacher is involved, and then all of the classroom teachers have been involved as well. The students that I see currently being involved in our culturally responsive culture here is we have students with special needs, we have ELL students, and then we have our German population and our Hispanic population. So looking at that, we do have some students and faculty members that need to be involved in addition to what we already have in place. And I feel like we need to get all of our district leadership team members involved. They need to be aware of the policies. They need to help promote the policies. And also just share their knowledge that they have. Like, this needs to be a conversation that is being had at our DLT meetings, so that we can all learn from one another. We also need to include the student body at large. So all of our students need to learn how to be culturally responsive. I think we need to include our site council, because on our site council we have business owners, we have stakeholders, we have all kinds of different types of stakeholders, and they also have a great wealth of knowledge as they are working out in the public, maybe even more so with the adults versus just the students, and they could provide a lot of feedback to us as well. And then also the parent-teacher association could be involved. So in conclusion, what I would like to just ask that maybe we could put into place here is that I feel like it would really be beneficial if we could work on getting a PBIS tiered system of supports in place. This behavior support system, it will include all stakeholders. This is cumbersome. It can be very time consuming, but it also is going to be very proactive and will keep us from having to do those reactive punishments and those negative punishments. We're really going to be focusing on the positive behavior of our students, and also giving responding in the ways that the students need and really meeting their needs. Another benefit of implementing this program into our school is that it will meet the accreditation requirements of the state. I would also like to propose that we use 2 in-service days each semester to give continuous ongoing training to teachers in culturally responsive practices. I think for the first one, we really need to talk to teachers about doing that self-appraisal and really looking at their own biases and seeing what it is that may be some barriers that they might be putting up for their students, and really looking to see what they can tap into. And then also, I think we need to get together and look at the different cultural groups that we have and share our knowledge with one another, because one teacher from one year to the next might really learn something about a culture that maybe a new teacher hasn't learned, or even a veteran teacher hasn't picked up yet. And we really need to share that knowledge with one another and work together as a team to embrace the diversity that we have in our school. So I want to thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and hopefully this gave you kind of a better idea of what we're talking about when we talk about culturally responsive instruction in the classroom, and when we talk about the behavior supports that we're looking at and being culturally responsive to those. Following this, I have the references that I used. So you may scroll roll through those if you need to.